Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the 1 to 75 leveling guide for the Primalist into the Druid Werebear. And with this, once you hit level 75 and at the end of this guide, you'll be able to continue on and go all the way to level 100 and go through all of the campaign, the timelines, and arena, and be able to complete all the content in the game, empowered or not. If, however, you want to start to transfer into something else, you can start the transformation into another build that you've either found on my channel or another content creator's channel that you've been wanting to try out. Now, this guide will stop at every few levels at specific points. Those points will either be when a skill specialization slot has opened up, or it's been a few levels and a boss fight's about to happen, and I'm going to stop and put my passive points and skill points in, and I'm going to show you exactly where I place them. Then I will include the gameplay of the bosses fights so that you can see how I took the bosses on. These will be sped up a bit to shorten the length of this overall video, but I'm also going to try and put in some gameplay of just me going around in the normal maps. That's going to show how I use the skills and go into combat, and I'm going to play that at regular speed so you can get a feel for the build and see the gameplay. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it.
I am the Primalist, man of the wilds, the link between the people of my tribe and the spirits of the land. I was returning to my home in Helboria from a hunt, only to find flames and destruction, a raid by the forces of Raya. My home and my family had been turned to ash. The call came for the tribes to unite, but I am drawn elsewhere. Now I am traveling to the Temple of Itera in search of answers from the Mother Goddess and the strength to take my vengeance.
Alright, just a couple of minutes into the game and we're already level 4, and with it we get our first skill specialization slot. With it we're going to go ahead, push S, open it up, and we're going to throw in wolves. You have 4 choices. There's a few of them that people like to do. I used to like the totems. They've gotten expensive with the way the tree reworked. I don't like them as much anymore. Ice thorns can be really powerful if you're going to plan on building into, say, the shaman and doing a lot of spell damage. Ice thorns is a great first skill, but in this one we're going to go ahead and do the wolf, and our very first point is going to go into savage hunters, and we're going to work our way over here on the left trying to get into the pack hunters for that +1 companion and maximum wolf so that we can have one more of them active than we have here. For passives, we have 2 points. Going to go ahead and throw both points into natural attunement. This is going to give us 2 points of attunement, but it also gives us some lightning and cold resist. It's never too early to start getting your resistances up so that you'll have a better time with survivability and not dying as often. And then for the gear, everything that I've found so far, the build planners again will be linked with all of these broken down portions in the written forum guide, which there's a link to in the description in the video, and the loot filter will be there as well. Alright, let's keep going. Alright, I am now level 9. We've done a couple of mini bosses, and these are my stats. Right now, the thing you want to be looking for is getting some void resistance. That's going to be very helpful at this point. I still haven't found any, but stacking health, getting void, maybe even some dodge, those are going to be the top things that you want to do right now. For the specialization slot, we got 2 more points for our Wolfie. We're going to go ahead and put 1 more point in Savage Hunters and 2 points into Tundra Stalkers. And then for our new skill that we get to spec into, we're going to go ahead and spec into Swipe, as this is something you will get to use in Werebear form. It will call it Swipe, and it will use this skill tree. We're going to go ahead and put the first point into Aspect of the Panther. And then for passives, we have 6 more points. Going to go ahead and throw all 6 points into Natural Attunement. Alright, let's go ahead and continue, travelers. Alright, for my character stats, you can see we're starting to get some resistances together. We've gotten some void percentage, not a lot. We got a little bit of armor and even a little bit of dodge. We're going to continue building into the void and of course building into all of them to try and get our survivability up. We are still deathless at this point. For our skills, we got 1 more point for the wolf. Gonna go ahead and throw it into Tundra Stalkers. And then for swipe, we have 3 points. Gonna put 1 more in Aspect of the Panther, 1 point into Feline Hunter, and then 1 point into Ambush. When we get into Werebear, it's gonna be very important that we have as much critical strike chance as possible. So we're gonna be building into critical strike chance as early as possible and get those points in. That way we'll get our mana back and be able to stay in Werebear for a longer period of time when we first start into it, until we can get to that permanent node when we get to 100% crit. For passives, we have 3 more points. 1 is going to go into Dual Weilding. You don't have to put into this, you can continue to use a two-handed weapon if you want, but I'm going to be trying to build more crit and get more flat melee physical damage so that we'll be just killing things incredibly quick. And then the last 2 points is going to go into Hunter's Restoration so that we have more health and we have health restored whenever we hit an enemy every 3 seconds. And this unlocks the Saber, and while we're not going to spec into the Saber, it's highly recommended that you put the Saber onto your bar and then you can summon it. You can have 2 maximum companions, but unfortunately you can only have 1 wolf in the beginning, so as soon as you summon the Saber, you can actually have 1 of both, and then when you get into the pack hunters and have +1 wolf and +1 companion, you'll be able to have 2 wolves and 1 saber. And the saber, even unspec, does quite a bit of damage, so it's going to help you in boss fights and clear even quicker. Alright, let's get back into it. Alright, we are now level 19, and here's the stat sheet. You can see we have just over 300 health, and then for our resistances, we have our void up a little higher than our level, and then for our physical, a little low. Right now, a good spot to aim is about 25% of all resistances, with the priority being on both a void and a physical. Of course, all of them would be the best. We have 19% armor, a little bit more dodge than we had last time, and for our skills, we have 2 more points for Summon Wolf. Gonna go ahead and put 1 point into Winterborn and 1 point into Pack Hunters. Now we can have 2 wolves plus our saber, so that'll be a little extra damage output. For Swipe, got 3 more points. Gonna go ahead and put 2 of them into Ambush and 1 point into Way of the Hunt so we can get some extra Leech. Leech is gonna be what keeps you alive really well. In fact, this build can even do hardcore mode just because of how much Leech you can get and the survivability that you can build into. It makes it quite easy to survive even for new players. And then we have our third specialization slot, which we're going to save for Werebear, but just because you can throw something in there until we get Werebear, I'm going to throw in the Saber. And for the Saber, I'm going to put 1 point in Heavy Paws, and then 2 points into Furry Swipes, and we're going to get our 4th point into Frenzy, so that they get 50% more attack speed, which is a huge boost. But remember, this is our Werebear slot, so as soon as we unlock our Mastery, we're going to go ahead and unspec it, and then put Werebear form in there. But for now, it's just a little extra damage boost for our Saber. For passives, we got 8 more points. Gonna go ahead and put 3 points into Hunter's Restoration for more health, 1 point into Primal Strength, and then the last 4 points are all gonna go into Survival of the Pack, so we get a little bit more melee damage as well as another 2% melee damage leached as health. So that's 2% here and 2% inside swipe. We now have 4% more leech than we had before we just put these points in, as well as we're gonna do a little extra damage. Alright, and as you can see, we now have 2 wolves and a saber, and we're ready to continue. Alright, I am now level 25, and we're choosing our class Mastery as we have reached the end of time and done the quest. We have about 40% Void when we took on Orbitos, the last boss, and we're starting to get all of our resistances up a little bit. We did lose a little physical, haven't started Necrotic yet, but the next thing that we really want to start working into is really getting our elementals up, because in a few chapters we're going to get into a lot of fire and a lot of cold and even a little bit of lightning, and it's going to start getting hard. So try and get your elementals up, and physical is always a good thing to try and get to 75% too, because there's a lot of physical hits that you'll take. Alright, now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and grab our mastery real quick, so we'll get the Werebear form. We're going to be a druid. Remember that this choice is the only real permanent choice in the entire game. This is one thing that you cannot respec later. So we're going to take the druid, and this is going to give us 20% increased health and mana, and when we leave a transformed state, we gain 70% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Of course, people like to stay in the transformed states 100% of the time, so this buff isn't a huge thing for us. But what's nice about it is if you take a node that makes you fall out of like Werebear form when you reach 30% health, if you do get knocked out of it, it does mean you get a huge boost of damage reduction, which means for 2 seconds you're basically invulnerable. But we're going to go ahead and choose that one, take it, boom, we got it. We're going to go to our skills. This is the part where we respec. We're going to get rid of the Saber because we're not going to use him anymore. We can still have him out on your bar so that he will kill things for you. You can still have him summoned, but we're not going to have him specialized. And we're going to jump into Werebear form. We're going to specialize that. We have 4 points right off the bat. The first thing we want to do is get Swipe Critical Strikes refund mana cost. The reason that we want this is it'll help us stay in Werebear form. For those of you that are unaware, in Werebear form, you do not regen mana, and when you run out of mana, you get knocked out of Werebear form. So we're going to be doing some things to try and get our mana back at all times, and one of those things is getting as close or at 100% critical strike chance so that all the hits you do will give the mana back for the cost of the skill, and that way you can have infinite uptime of Werebear form. Now that we have these points in, the next thing that you'll be working towards is 4 points in Ursane Heart to get into the Wizened Claws and Starclaw. For Wolf, we got 2 more points. We're going to go ahead and put both of these into the attack speed and move speed. The next thing that we'll be working towards is being able to summon up to our companion limit. However, at the moment we are at our companion limit, but if we need our bar for some other stuff and we have to get rid of like the Saber, you'll be able to get 1 additional Wolf as we go towards that. In the meantime, it's going to be a lot more attack speed and move speed for them. For Swipe, we got 2 more points. This is where the critical strike is starting to be really important, so we're going to go ahead and put 2 more points in Ambush. And then for passives, you have to put 20 points in the Primalist base class before you can put points in any of the other classes. So we unlocked the Master Druid. However, if I were to click on this and try and put a point in, it's not going to let me. You have to have 20 points here first. You got to hit that blue line. So we're going to throw 1 more point into Survival of the Pack. And now we have unlocked our other masteries. We're going to go to the Druid Mastery, and we're going to put 6 points in Blood Claws and 1 point in Bark Skin. And it should be noted that you can put points in all of these. However, the Mastered class is the one that allows you to go all the way to the top. The other 2 stop you at the halfway point, but you can still put points in the bottom half. We will eventually put some points into the Beastmaster. We're going to get that damage reduction from nearby enemies, as well as get into Boarheart so that we can get up to 30% damage reduction. But for now, this is where I put the points, as that physical penetration will improve your damage, and 12% physical damage leeches health means a lot more leech coming from Swipe. Alright, let's get back into it. Alright, I am now level 34. We have just over 600 health. Werebear is starting to come along. We're getting our crit chance up a bit higher so that we're in the form quite a bit longer. And then for our resistances, you see that we have at least some of all. We have a little bit more physical than we had before. I'd still like to get this up, especially in this area, to at least 50%, but I just haven't been finding it. We do have Capped Void, but we're not really running into that anymore. But one thing at this point that you should start looking into is capping out that elemental. Cold and fire are coming in the next couple of chapters, and the cold and the fire you want to have maxed when you get to that, or it's going to be a tough time because the cold hits really hard, especially when you get to the ice golems. We got 17% armor and 6% dodge, and then you can see our melee critical strike chance. It says 13%, but it's actually quite a bit more. If I actually go into Werebear, I don't have any enemies actually, so I can't hit anything, but with our skills, we get that 200% crit chance from swipe, and then in Werebear, when you charge, you get 100%. So we actually get 300% more critical strike chance, and we have an 8% base, so that's 24% more than you're seeing here, for a total of 37% crit. So we're critting 1/3 of the time, which is starting to get really good, and we're slowly working our way up to that 100% barrier. So let's go ahead and get into skills. For skills, we got 3 points for the wolf. Gonna go ahead and throw 2 more points into On the Hunt, and then 1 point into Howl of the Might. Remember, we're working towards allowing ourselves to summon our wolves up to our companion limit. As soon as we get that, we can get rid of the saber. And then for swipe, we have 3 points. Going to go ahead and put them all into ambush, so we have that 200% increased crit chance. Next, we'll be dividing our points up between the global critical multiplier. This will make you hit much harder while in Werebear and doing crits, and we'll be getting more leech. For Werebear, we have 7 points. We're going to go ahead and throw 4 points in You're Saying Heart for a lot of defense, but this unlocks the Wizened Claw and Star Claw. We're going to throw 1 point in each of those. Now, as you stack spell damage, and that's spell damage, not adaptive spell damage, not spell critical strike chance, it's spell damage. It's regular percent increase spell damage. For every 1% spell damage you have, you will now get 1% more critical strike chance and 1% more melee damage. So you're basically turning one affix into a hybrid affix, which is really weird, but we're going to stack spell damage and we're going to get 2 benefits out of it, and this is going to help you reach that 100% crit. Mostly the spell damage we're looking for is going to come in the form of being on idols, so we're not going to really get a lot of it probably until we get to the Monolith of Fate and end game, but we're going to go ahead and spec into this now just so when we do find an item with a little bit of spell damage, it's a big boost. Instead of having to put melee damage and put critical strike chance on items, now you can just roll spell damage and get both benefits. And then with our one last point, we're going to go ahead and put it into Rip and Tear, so we get 100% crit chance and 100% damage. Next, as we're moving along, we're going to want to get at least 1 point into Charge, maybe even 2, because that's going to allow us to charge more often. And we're going to slowly work our way. The last points that we want to do here, we want to get it to where we proc Entangling Roots whenever we war, and then we're also going to work towards the mana efficiency in the bottom left. It's going to take the full 20 points to get all this done, but once you get both of those, you'll be able to sustain your Werebear form by proccing the Entangling Roots for a very little mana cost, and then Entangling Roots, which we're going to get into right now as our 4th skill. We're going to work our way down here and get mana gained per second. So while you're in Werebear, you war, it procs Entangling Roots. When you stand in the patches, it gives you mana per second, and that allows you to regen mana and stay in Werebear form 100% of the time. We're going to go ahead and throw 4 points into Nourish, and then 1 point into Bountiful Harvest. For passives, we're gonna get out of the Druid tree. We've got our points there for the leech. That's really all that we wanted right off the bat. Now we have 12 points. We're going to get into a few things. We want Aspect of the Shark, Aspect of the Boar, and less damage taken from nearby enemies. This is going to increase your survivability a lot. So we're going to go ahead and put 5 points in You're Saying Strength, so we take 10% less damage from nearby enemies. 1 point in Savagery, 1 point in Ambush. Now we have a 60% uptime of an Aspect of the Shark buff. So when we do a melee attack, we get Aspect of the Shark for 3 seconds. It gives us 50% more melee damage and 10% attack speed, and it has a 5-second cooldown. And then we're going to put in our last, well, we'll do 4 points into Boarheart. You don't need the 5th point because the duration's not very important. As we build up, we're going to be able to proc it ourselves. But right now, we have a 100% chance whenever we get hit by a melee attack, that will proc Aspect of the Boar, and then for 4 seconds will take 15% less damage. It has a 2-second cooldown, so you kind of have to get hit to take less damage, but eventually as we work towards the top, you'll be able to proc it whenever you do a melee hit, so you don't have to get hit. And then for the last point, we're actually going to throw one more into your Saint Strength, just for 2% more or less damage taken out of that. And then for gear, I'm not going to cover all of the gear, but just be aware that right now to get your critical strike chance up, your best bet is trying to find items or at least put on the melee critical strike chance that's an added percentage. That's base crit. So by getting that on both weapons, right now I've got 3% on one and 1% on the other. You have 5% base crit, and now I have 4% added base crit. So we have 9% base crit, and then all your percentage increases. So my 300% increase that I'm getting 200% from swipe and 100% from charge takes that 9%, and you have a 300% increase, which puts you all the way at 36% chance to crit, which is a big bonus just from adding in that melee. You can get up to 5% on both of these, and then as we get into the higher levels of items dropping, we'll look for the implicit, like the Raider Axe, that can come with 5% base as an implicit, and then you can add 5% to it, and once you get those, you're going to be getting to 100% crit, no problem. Alright, let's go ahead and get back into it. Alright, I am now level 40. We are still deathless and very, very tanky at this point, and we are at the Immortal Citadel about to take on the bosses before we go into the next chapter. So a quick update, we do have our 75% cold damage. That's more of in preparation for the next couple of chapters, or the next chapter coming up, especially Heoboria. And we have fire damage. We'd like to get this capped, but I still haven't found enough to quite do that. We did trade out a bit of our void resistance for some other stuff, including some spell damage that we got. We got a couple hybrid spell damage pieces. We have a lot more armor. Most of this is because we are in Werebear at the current moment, and that is where we're getting a huge proportion of our damage reduction. We got a little more physical, so we are a little bit more tanky. And then for skills, we're going to go ahead and just unsummon or undespecialize the wolves, and we're going to trade it out for ice thorns. The wolves at this point are just dying constantly, and since we're in werebear form, we can't resummon them, and standing around waiting for them to be revived is just annoying. And since we're not building into minions at all, we're going to go ahead and do ice thorns. And the reason we're doing ice thorns is because you can get this to proc when you get hit. And therefore, when you're in werebear form and you get hit, you can have Ice Thorns proc, and it is defensive. We're going to build into it to where it gives us an armor shield. So we're going to go with 1 point in Anim Affiliate, 1 point in Thorn Shield, and then we're going to put 3 points in Dagger Thorns and 1 point in Bramble Armor. There's now a 10% chance when we get hit that we will get a shield for 1 second that gives us 40 additional flat armor. And as we build into this, you'll be able to get a 40% chance with these points, and then you can get into a total of 140 flat armor per shield that you have up at a time. And if you take a lot of hits, you can actually have quite a ridiculous amount of armor come into play. Then for swipe, we got 1 more point. We're going to go ahead and throw in an Apex Predator for that 25% global critical multiplier, so we hit a little harder. We have 2 points in werebear form. I was looking it over, and we do not have enough points to actually put 1 point into hightail. If you'd like to shorten the charge duration, you'll have to take 1 point out of rip and tear. But for now, we have just enough points to make it down to Ursane Wisdom and enough to make it to Woodland Bear. So we're going to put 2 points in Pummel. That's going to give us some more melee physical damage as we work down towards that mana efficiency. And we have 6 points for Entangling Roots. 1 point will go into Mana Bloom, so we get mana back for it. 1 point in Roots of Lap, and at this point it's pretty much set up for how we need it when we do start proccing it while we're in werebear form. And then we're going to give ourselves 3 points in Imbued Sap, so we'll have 90% increased damage when we proc it. It says ally damage, but this does affect us as well. And then 1 point in Grove Master, so that it'll have a larger area, so it's easier to be inside of. For passives, we got 10 more points. We're still going to put them all in the Beastmaster. These are going to be some of the final points we do in the Beastmaster. We're going to do 2 points in Ursane Strength to cap it out for that maximum amount of damage taken from nearby enemies being reduced. Then we're going to put 1 point in Tusk Warrior, so we get 5% more physical damage when Aspect of the Boar is active. It's very little, but that point's needed to unlock the next tier, which will then throw 5 points into Porcine Constitution. This will give us an additional 15% damage reduction when we proc Aspect of the Boar, so we're now at 30% damage reduction. And then we're going to throw 2 points into Primal Strength, and this gives us an 8% chance when we do a melee attack to proc the Aspect of the Boar, and I believe there's no cooldown on that. It might affect the 2-second cooldown, but either way, you'll now be able to get it without being hit. You can actually do the hitting. It'll still proc when you get hit with a 100% chance if you don't already have it, or if the cooldown is not active, but now you can do it before you get a hit, so there's a chance for that, which will increase your survivability, because of course having the damage reduction before you get hit is always better. And that's it for now. I will see you guys at the next update. Let's get into it. Alright, I am level 49. I did have to run the last map almost twice in order to hit 49 before we took on Lilith and then Lagon, the final two bosses of the campaign. And the reason for that is so that I could show you the 5th specialization slot before we do the boss fights. So for our stats, you can see we picked up some more necrotic. We're still a little low on poison, but for the most part our elementals are almost capped and our physical is quite high. We have over 1,000 flat armor. Our dodge is pretty low, but we're not really stacking that. And then as you can see, we have our 212% crit multiplier. And then for our critical strike chance, we have 44%, but this actually gets even higher when you get the 200% from using the aspect of the Panther inside to swipe, and then you get another 100% when you charge. So we're actually sitting at almost 80 to 85% crit chance when we're in the fight, which means we're almost at that 100% barrier, and we're staying in Werebear form for a lot longer now, almost permanently, but not quite yet. But now that we put the points into the tree, we might hit that 100% uptime. First, let's start with Ice Thorns. We have 8 points. We're going to go ahead and put 1 more point in Bramble Armor and then 4 points in Spell Thorns. There will now be a 40% chance when you get hit for it to proc. We have 3 more points. We're going to go ahead and put all 3 of them into Bark Shield. The other thing that you'll want to put into is this Bulb Shield. So when there's a 40% chance for it to proc, there'll be another 40% chance on that 40% chance for it to do a double cast. So you'll be able to just get a little bit more. It's not a huge percentage, but there's a chance to have an extra stack of that flat armor. For swipe, we have 2 points. I'm going to split them up, 1 point in Apex Predator and 1 point in Way of the Hunt for a little more leech. For Werebear form, I did find a helm that had a tier 1 plus 1 level to Werebear form, so we now have 3 points. So what we're going to try and do here is hopefully we can reduce the cost of swipe down to 2. As soon as you get the cost of swipe down to 2, when it refunds the mana on a critical strike, you get 3 mana back, which lets you it allows you to generate mana basically when you're in Werebear form. Hopefully 2 points in this mana efficiency will get us there. 10% mana efficiency isn't a huge amount and it's very unlikely. If you stack attunement, you can also get down to 2, but we might have to take the 300% already. So we'll throw those 2 points in, and it's still 3, so we're going to go ahead and take the Ursane Wisdom, and as soon as we leave Werebear form, which I'll do while we continue this and go back in, it should reflect that, and you'll have a 2 cost on that skill. And then for Entangling Roots, 2 more points in Grove Master, 1 point in Reclamation, and then we're going to get into the duration with 1 point in Lasting Briar. For our 5th skill, we're going with Summon Thorn Totem. We did pick up one idol that had like a 4% chance to proc the Thorn Totem on hit, and we're going to want one of those. And what that's going to allow you to do is take advantage of the spell damage while active totem on the other idols, which is allowing you to get the critical strike chance and the melee damage that you need. With this, we're going to put 4 points right into Forested Expanse, and then 2 points into Eternal Forest, and we're working towards them all being summoned at once with 1 point in Grove Mind. And then back to Werebear here. If we summon ourselves into Werebear, our swipe cost is now down to 2, and it will refund a full 3 when you get a critical strike. So we can now generate. You should be able to stay in Werebear as long as your crit chance is very, very high, at least like 80 to 90%. 100% is really good, but 80 to 90% should keep you in Werebear permanently at this point, and we don't even have the Entangling Roots going yet. For passives, we got 10 points. We're going to finish off in the Beastmaster tree, 3 more points in Primal Strength, so there is a 20% chance every time we do a melee attack to get that aspect of the boar for the damage reduction. Now we are finally going back into the Druid Master class. I'm going to go ahead and put 6 more points in Bark Skin, so we can get that endurance percentage up and that extra flat armor, and then 1 point in Spirit Claws for that 1 flat melee physical damage. Alright. We're going to go ahead and go on to the boss fights. I will play them. You've probably noticed, but most of the gameplay is at normal pace, just so you can actually see how I'm dodging and what I'm doing. But this is a very tanky character, and so far we're still deathless. So here we go. We'll do the 2 bosses, and then I'll meet you probably around the Abomination fight in the endgame Monolith of Fate timeline. Alright, we just finished up with Abomination. We're working through the timeline for Rhea. This is where you definitely want to get your Void protection up before you take on this boss. I'll be switching some of my gear back to get some of the Void resistance that we had earlier. On top of that, keeping your physical resist up at the same time and your armor high is also going to be good. Here at level 55, still deathless and almost 800 health. And then for the skills, we have 2 more points for Ice Thorns. We're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Bark Shield and 1 point in Bulb Shield. So we have a chance to recast along with now having 120 flat armor per time that it procs. For Swipe, we got 1 more point. Gonna go ahead and put it in Apex Predator. Werebear has 1 more point. We're now gonna work towards getting Entangling Roots to proc whenever we cast War. Therefore, we're gonna put 1 point in Intimidating War. For Entangling Roots, we have 1 more point. It's going to go in Lasting Briar for a little more duration. And then for Summon Thorn Totems, we have 9 points. We're going to go ahead and put 2 more points in Eternal Forest to increase the duration that they last. 1 point in Grove Mind so that they will all be summoned at once. You'll now get 5 in a ring. And then we're going to work towards getting Armor Shred. So we're going to put 1 point in Ancient Power, 2 points in Impale, and then 3 points in Shred Armor so that each of the Thorn Totems will have a 60% chance to shred armor on their attacks. And then for passives, we have 7 more points. We're going to go ahead and max out Spirit Claws. Alright, I'll see you guys at level 65. Alright, and we're now level 65. We've defeated Rhea, we've done some arena, we picked up some keys, and on top of that, we still haven't died. I only went to wave 30 in the arena before I got, scared. I didn't want to ruin that deathless tag because I do want to put this as a hardcore, viable build leveling guide as well. You can see our resistances are still slightly below capped, but they're getting better. For the Rhea fight, we only had 57% void resistance, which still went really well. We were able to face tank the entire thing. Most of that's probably due to the armor being another form of additional damage reduction, and that we had really strong leech on top of not being able to be crit, thanks to us wearing the woven flesh that we got from the abomination fight. Alright, moving on to the skills, we have 2 points for Ice Thorns. I'm going to go ahead and do 1 point in Bark Shield and 1 point in Bulb Shield. For Swipe, we got 2 more points. Going to go ahead and max out the Apex Predator, and then 1 point in Wagarian Reach, so we have extra area with our attacks. For Werebear form, we have 2 more points. Going to go ahead and put both of them in Iron Hide, so when we war, we'll gain 200 health, but this unlocks the Woodland Bear, which means in just 1 more point, we'll finally be able to get the roots, which means we'll be able to actually use war, so that we'll be able to get all of the benefits of it, such as putting frailty on the enemy, gaining the health, and then you'll have roots, which will slow all the enemies around you, give you the 90% increased damage, heal you, and it will also give you mana back. And then for Entangling Roots, 2 more points, going to put them both in Lasting Briar. And then for Summon Thorn Totem, 2 more points, going to max out that Shred Armor. For passives, we have 10 more points. Going to go ahead and max out the Woodlore so that we get some extra health with a Vitality, and also get 40% Poison Resist, which is much easier to get here than on gear. 1 point in Eternal Nature for that attunement and health, and that leaves us with 1 point, which our next 10 points are all going to go in Hide Skin. We get a huge amount of health, but we also get our max health gained as endurance threshold as 1%, which means instead of getting 20% of your health as it scales as endurance, as your endurance threshold, we're going to be able to get that up to 30%. So right now we have 21%. But what that does is if we have 1100 health, normally you're at 20%, which means 1/5 of that, which is about 220 health, is going to be your threshold, which means when you get below 220 health, you're going to be at the point where your threshold actually kicks in. Now you can raise that up to 30%, which means it would actually be closer to 330 health, which is a big boost. So that's why we're going to put 10 points in there. If you want, if for some reason you're struggling and you're being, killed, I don't know how, but the Werebear is just that tanky, you can put 5 points in Berserker and get that 30% less damage taken when you're on low health, and that way, even though the low health of Werebear, you'll be knocked out of Werebear, at least you'll have this damage reduction, which will keep you from being actually killed. Alright, let's get back into it, and I'll see you guys at level 75. Alright, we are now finally level 75 and time for our final update here. We have capped out our void, our cold, everything else is getting pretty close. We're almost completely there. We've got 1350 flat armor, and then for our skills, one more point for Ice Thorns, which we're going to throw into Bulb Shield. For Swipe, going to throw one more point into Way of the Hunt. For Werebear form, going to go ahead and get that Woodland Bear. That way we can now have Entangling Roots proc. And even though it says a plus 15 mana cost, because of the 300% mana efficiency we have over here, the cost will still be low. In fact, it'll only cost 6 mana total. And you'll be able to get that back within a couple of seconds of the Entangling Roots giving you mana per second. One more point in Lasting Briar, and then for Summon Thorn Totem with 2 more points, gonna go ahead and go into the speed and range with Winged Thorns for both of those. For passives, we got 10 more points, gonna put 8 of them into Hideskin to where it's almost maxed, and then, oh, we gotta do one more. And then we'll put 9 points there and 1 point into Ursane Maul so that we can now get the Veracity buff, which is gonna give you increased global critical strike chance as well as increased physical damage. And that's going to be it. Where I would go from this point forward is put some more points into Ursane Maul to get that duration up to like 3 or 4 seconds to make sure that you actually have it to be able to use it. And then you can get the health gained on crit with critical strike chance. This is also very helpful. It'll help heal you. Or if you need more armor, you can also get a lot of flat armor both here in Briarguard and here in Oaken form. Both of those I recommend. For the skills, you can't really change out the skills, but if you don't want to run the Thorn Totems, you could put Maelstrom on, but Maelstrom will steal some of your mana if you're not careful with it. And really, other than that, I wouldn't recommend anything else. But at this point, you could switch over to another build. You can switch to the Earthquake build, in which you'll have to put some points into the Shaman to unlock Earthquake. But if you have that staff that procs it whenever you charge in Werebear form, you can pretty much just swap right over to that. And that's pretty much going to be it. So, hope you guys enjoyed it, and remember, stay safe.